The House Judiciary Committee, and while you won't get a chance to vote on the next Supreme Court nominee, I wonder what you think of Democrats' call to put off confirmation process until after the American public has weighed in via the November elections.
I don't think there's any need to do that. I think we have a majority rule in our country. We have a Senate that functions. We have a president that is going to make a nomination, and I think they should go ahead and have hearings and have a vote this fall.
Do you think the Supreme Court nomination becomes a new focus of the 2018 elections? Republicans had been planning on running on the tax cuts.
I think it's another issue that people are going to be talking about. I think it was an issue in the 2016 campaign. I talked to a lot of voters who weren't too happy with the choices of Clinton versus Trump, but they voted for President Trump because they knew that the Supreme Court was going to be an issue.
What do you say to voters when they bring up the Supreme Court and this fight to come?
Well, it takes a look at how has the Supreme Court gotten to this point where it's so powerful. I think you can take a step back and look at how the court has ruled over the decades and taken more and more power. You see that it begins to act like a super legislature, and every single nomination becomes a major battle. You look at all these decisions that are 5-4, fundamental individual liberties by a 5-4 vote, freedom of speech by a 5-4 vote. These are very important issues, and the country is engaged on it.
You know one of the Supreme Court nominees, or at least one of the ones that's on the president's list of potential nominees, Thomas Hardiman of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. How do you know him?
I just know him from Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy, and I've known him for a number of years. And I remember he was up last time. I think he was the runner-up when Gorsuch got the call, and I made a few phone calls to Tom before it, just kind of checking in, seeing what was going to happen. And then there was that mysterious day before the nomination where Tom was spotted driving east, and everybody thought that he might get the nomination. So it's a very intriguing process that they go through as the president reviews candidates.
What are your thoughts on Thomas Hardiman's judicial style? What would your recommendation be to the president if he asked for your advice?
I actually offered some advice before the last one. I saw the president for a second. I said, Tom Hardiman's a good man. So again, this is the decision that the president's going to be taking very seriously. It's a very serious responsibility that the president has, and we'll look forward to his pick.
We're talking with Congressman Keith Rothfus of Pennsylvania, Republican, joining us until the top of the hour. You can call in, Republicans 202-748-8001 if you want to join in. Democrats 202-748-8000. Independents 202-748-8002. Having this discussion during a very busy week in Washington. Besides what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court on the floor of the House yesterday, Republicans failed to move forward a immigration overhaul bill for the second time. How did you vote on that bill yesterday?
I did not vote for the bill yesterday. There are some very good things in that bill. I'm a co-sponsor of the Good Lat 1 measure that we had last week. We got 193 votes on the bill last week. We got, I think, 121 yes votes yesterday. If you take a look at the two vote totals, I think there are only 18 or 19 Republicans who did not vote for either measure. So I think somewhere in that mix is a working majority that we can come up with some legislation. My hope is that we're going back to the drawing board and seeing what it's going to take to get to 218.
This bill yesterday, as you noted, doing worse than the one last week. This was supposed to be the compromise measure. Should Republican leaders have even put this on the floor?
I think, well, it was a very confusing process. There was talk over the weekend of adding a couple measures on E-Verify on ag workers, and that was dropped at the last minute. Whether that had a role in that vote total, I'll let the prognosticators make a diagnosis on that. But the fact is that there are good things in both bills, and we got to be going back and taking a look at it. It's a very serious issue that we get that border secured. We know places where people are coming in. We know we have to do a better job at our ports of entry. We have a horrific heroin problem in this country. Overwhelmingly, the heroin in this country is coming from Mexico. If that's not a reason to secure the border, I don't know what is, but a lot of that's going to be at ports of entry. And there was good language in these bills on bolstering ports of entry and what we're doing down there with technology and inspections and Border Patrol agents. Again, so this is something that we have to get back to. Was it a mistake for the president to weigh in on this bill yesterday and encourage Republicans to support it? Well, I think it's been a little frustrating because last Friday the president put out a tweet saying maybe we should wait till the election, and then yesterday he comes out and says supports this bill. I think it would be helpful if we had more input from the administration as we try to tackle this issue over the next few weeks, and I hope we can get back there.
Do these two votes shake your confidence in this Republican leadership team?
No, it doesn't. I think if we can diagnose what was going on, I think if I were to criticize anything, it was the order in which this process was conducted. You know, we have a Judiciary Committee, we have a Homeland Security Committee. It would be better if these things were being put through the committee. You had somewhat of an ad hoc committee set up with different factions going on, and I think there are better ways to do it. I think we had a very good conference with the GOP conference last Thursday night. A lot of ideas got put forth, but it was really the first full engagement of the rank and file on what would become a good piece of legislation.
Was there a plan given to you on what happens if this compromise bill doesn't pass? Is there going to be a very narrow bill on the House floor that would address the family separations issue?
That's under consideration. I know I've been talking with other colleagues. I'd be supporting that bill. And so my hope is that we would also move forward on that. And I think we could there's no reason why you have to do them separately. I think you could get an expedited review on a bill like that and get it right over to the Senate and have it sent to the president.
As we said, plenty to talk about with Congressman Keith Rothfus. He's with us for about the next 15 minutes. Jack in Scottsdale, Arizona, line for Republicans. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. First off, on the immigration issue that the gentleman just spoke about, I appreciate that, but we have to get to a point where we deal with the facts in this country, okay? I'm from a 10th generation American. Now, 99% came in through the port of New York. They became American, but they made sure their children were Americans. They became known as the greatest generation, okay? Now, these ones have been coming in from Mexico. It's just not 2 million or 11 million. Between Chinese, Mexican, and everybody else, there's probably 25, 30 million illegals in this country. Now, not all of them are bad, but here's the bottom line, okay? This cost this country billions of dollars between schools, hospitals, and everything else. Now, the second point he didn't make was that he talked about the drugs. But here's the deal, okay? We need to declare a big problem with Mexico because they let this happen. They're letting this happen through the cartels. This is a third world country. This isn't even like Germany or France. This is a third world country. We need to put our foot down and tell them, you either straighten this out or not just a wall will go up, but no trade, nothing. You stop them dead in their tracks.
Congressman.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised the issue of the cartels. This is a horrific problem on the southern side of the border. 130,000 people have been killed over the last 10 years with impunity. I think only 5% of the murders in Mexico are actually prosecuted. The cartels are running the show in a good part of the country. You know, we have an election coming up this weekend in Mexico. The leader is, and I think Henry Correa is going to be on the next slot. He might have some more insights because he's right down there on the border, seeing what's happening. I think we do have to have a much more aggressive position vis-a-vis the cartels. I actually have a bill that's out there called the Border Protection Fund Act, which calls for us to actually be going after the cartels and taking the assets that we can find and put them into a fund that would help to fund border security and drug treatment programs. If there was ever an issue that these two countries need to be working on together, it's the cartels. There is a program called the Merida Initiative, which began probably 10, 15 years ago. I think it's a program that we have to take a look at. How can we improve it? How can we help foster the rule of law in Mexico? I appreciate the caller bringing up this very serious issue.
To the Keystone State, Wayne's waiting, a line for Democrats in Littlestown. Wayne, go ahead.
Yes. No, I'm in favor of controlling the borders, no doubt. But when the man gets up there, known as our president, says, who's going to pay for it? Mexico. This man's lied so much. And, you know, as far as my association with you people, the Republicans, come on. This is ridiculous. I mean, I like what you're saying. Something's got to be done. We got opiates and everything else. But when you got a liar up there, you better impeach the man. That's all I got to say. God bless America.
Congressman.
Wayne, thank you for the call. I think part of the negotiating with NAFTA, I think the president might be trying to find a way through whatever means to find a better deal for America, and whatever, whether it's going to be tariffs or something that would go into help to pay our bills. I like my idea of the Border Protection Fund, where we're going to go after Mexican cartels and try to seize some assets. There are billions of dollars that these cartels have. I think that's a way that you can try to get some funding into that wall. But Wayne, I just want to challenge you a little bit as we go into the 4th of July week. Just a little quote you had, you people. And this ties into kind of the state that we find ourselves in the division in our country. You know, we members of Congress who are out and work in our districts, talking to people all the time, and we see a lot of that division. And it's really important that we try to have conversations with each other. I think it helps to take the edge off. I think we live in a time now where people seem to demonize each other. You can't just have a policy difference anymore. You're evil for having that policy position. Not to say that Wayne was suggesting that, but I think as we enter into the 4th of July week, it's a good time for us to kind of focus on what does unite us. You go back to the founding of this country. You go to that wonderful Declaration of Independence, where we hold certain truths to be self-evident, that we're endowed by your Creator with certain inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and that to protect these rights, governments are instituted among men. This is a time to reflect on all this country has been, all this country can be. And I look forward to talking to folks next week during the 4th of July recess.
Do you think the president has been helpful in what you're asking for?
I think the president kind of reflects where the country's at. You know, we're talking about Justice Kennedy, and we talk about the division in the country. There's a remarkable book out now, and I recommend it, Scalia Speaks. It talks about the relationship and somewhat between Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg. Polar opposites, but they were able to have a good relationship. But you go back to the modern... I tie it to this vitriol that we see out here. When Senator Kennedy went to the Senate floor in 1987 and did a character assassination on Robert Bork, you know, we just keep on seeing things out there in the body politic, and I think that set us down a different kind of path.
Beltsville, Maryland's next. Mary, line for Republicans. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to start out to say I am a woman, and this is to all males and all females of the United States of America. We are killing innocent babies all the time, and everybody wants to talk about immigration. It is murder when you take the life of a baby. And you could call it a fetus, you can call it anything you want. But once that baby is in your womb, you have no right, no more than you want to talk about all the immigration that's going on in the United States of America. Wake up, America. It's murder. Murder.
Yeah, again, I think the caller reflects the passion that a lot of folks feel about this issue. And again, you go to the Supreme Court. You go back to 1973, and you take a look at the 77-2 decision, and Justice White, President Kennedy's appointee there, who talked about what the majority had done as an exercise in raw judicial power. And you see continually states trying to respond to that and come up with even modest restrictions. We passed legislation out of the House of Representatives dealing with pain-capable unborn children. The United States is one of only 7 countries in the entire world that allow elective abortions after 20 weeks. And this was fact-checked by the Washington Post, and they were surprised by that fact because it was I think, mentioned during the presidential campaign. This is a time at which unborn children can feel pain. And when the Supreme Court steps in as the super legislature and puts together one test or another test that really does not reflect what the people can try to arrive at through their elected representatives, that's where you get a lot of the division in this country.
Do Do you think Roe v. Wade will be overturned in the coming years?
I'm not going to make any predictions on that because people were making predictions on that in the 1980s when Justice O'Connor was appointed. And it was Justice O'Connor, I think, in the Akron decision, who talked about Roe versus Wade being on a collision course with itself. As the age of viability became earlier and earlier, that made an issue for the trimester framework because you have unborn children born significantly premature at 21 weeks who can survive, who weigh barely a pound. So I think these are the kind of issues that the Supreme Court's going to be grappling with.
Just about 5 minutes left with Congressman Keith Rothfus of Pennsylvania. Did want to ask you about that hearing today with Rod Rosenstein, Chris Wray. It's happening in the Judiciary and Oversight and Government Reform Committee starting at 9:30 this morning. If you have a chance to ask a question, what are you going to ask?
I want to see what the plan is going forward. The Inspector General put out a very troubling report talking about bias that infected the upper echelons at the FBI and talking about decisions that Director Comey was making. If there was ever a case that called for a special counsel, it would have been the email investigation. You go back and take a look at what Louis Freeh did back in the 1990s, where he was actually recommending a special counsel investigation with the Clinton fundraising scandals in 1996, but Janet Reno said no. Comey found himself in this very difficult position that would not have happened had there been a special counsel. And you saw Director Comey making decisions that were politically driven, if not partisan. You can be political without being partisan. He repeatedly made decisions on what he was doing because he was concerned about how the FBI would be conceived or the legitimacy of of a Hillary Clinton presidency, and therefore he had to take that action on July 5th with the press conference without the blessing of the Attorney General, and same with the October 28th letter in 2016 where he notified Congress. And then you have Agent Strzok, you have Agent Page or Attorney Page, very troubling text back and forth, and we're still waiting for documents from the FBI, from the Department of Justice, and we have legitimate oversight responsibilities. So I think we're going to try to get into when we're going to see the documents that we've been asking for.
That hearing today, again, 9:30 a.m. You can watch it on C-SPAN 3, listen to it on the free C-SPAN radio app. You can also go to cspan.org to watch it as well. Time for one or two more callers. Willie's been waiting in Savannah. Line for Democrats. Willie, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
How are you this morning? I want to ask the representative this question here. And the question I want to ask the representative is, what rules are we playing by now? Are we playing by the Mitch McConnell rule? Are we playing by the rule that said President Barack Obama, a true statesman in the White House, who tried to put up a judge that the Republicans said, wait till after the election? Let's not be distracted with all other callers from Arizona and this one calling about the wall. Right now we're talking about Chief Justice Kennedy stepping down in a critical time before the November election. Let's stay with that focus. Let's don't talk about all of...
Question, Willie. Go ahead, Congressman.
Well, again, I think you take a look at what was going on back at the time that Garland was nominated. You had a situation where President Obama would be doing things like saying 20 or 21 times that he did not have the authority to do the deferred action program. And then when he did the deferred action program, he was repeatedly reversed at the Supreme Court, 9-0. And I had questions at the time about if the president nominates someone. Look, you have to have a nomination, and then there's a confirmation. The Senate has a right to confirm or not confirm. The Senate chose not to confirm. That's the constitutional framework we have. This president will make a nomination. This Senate will make a decision on whether to confirm or not confirm. And that's the process that we have in our Constitution.
Last call, Plattsburgh, New York. Rob's a Republican. Go ahead.
Yes, gentlemen. My question is, I think our president is doing a heck of a good job, and I wish the Democrats could quit trying to sabotage his whole political game and try to straighten this country out. And if we work with the president and the Democrats decide to work with us instead of fighting us, we get a lot done. And I'm so sick of hearing these Democrats and MSNBC putting them down and all this. I think they're running scared because they know exactly when all this comes out with Cuomo and all this, they're going to find out the Democrats are behind the whole political game of this.
I appreciate the call, and actually I appreciate C-SPAN. I appreciate the opportunity that callers have to dial in. We do have three branches of government. You have the legislative branch that is conducting oversight right now of the executive branch and agencies there. And so we will be getting to the truth on these matters.
We'll let you get your day started with the Judiciary Committee hearing starting at 9:30. Keith Rothfus, Republican from Pennsylvania. Appreciate your time. Come back again.
Have a great 4th. Thank you.
Up next, Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar joins us to discuss Justice Kennedy's retirement, yesterday's failed immigration compromise bill, and what's happening in his Texas border district. And later, more of your phone calls on what has already been a very busy week in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back.